All right, time to ramble again. Tulsi Gabbard retweets a Glenn Greenwald tweet. And this is what Glenn says. It seems indisputable that Joe Rogan has a greater commitment to defending press freedoms and a far better understanding of what's at stake in the Assange prosecution and extradition than the vast majority of establishment media outlets. Now, this is an issue that is very important to Donald Trump supporters, believe it or not. It's more important to Trump supporters than it is to Biden supporters. Biden supporters think, for the most part, that this guy, Julian Assange, is a war criminal. And furthermore, they think that Joe Rogan is a misogynist, transphobic, sort of brute who does and says things that don't align with the neoliberal order and with like the CNN version of politics. And Joe Rogan, I think, is one of the most honest commentators out there. You may not agree with his style. It's the same way that Trump talks. You may not like Donald Trump's style, but there are similarities. I would say Joe Rogan tells a lot more truth, though, than Trump does. And Gabbard, she was on Joe Rogan's show, and Rogan literally fell in love with her, basically, and said, hey, you're it. You'd be the best candidate for this job. And even to this day, Joe Rogan has said, I don't know what happened with Tulsi Gabbard. Her party didn't want her. That's the way Rogan said it. And again, to me, this sets the table for 2024 independent run for Tulsi Gabbard. That's what I'm thinking. But again, who knows if that's what she's going to do with her time in her life. But here's another very important part of this. Tulsi Gabbard has done zero to promote Joe Biden's candidacy. And talking like this or suggesting things like this, I guarantee you, this isn't even in Biden's wheelhouse or on his radar. If someone approached him and asked about Julian Assange, he might not even know who Julian Assange is. Trump, on the other hand, has gotten some bad advice from like the Jared Kushners and those types, basically saying, oh, you really can't touch this issue. You got to lay off and just, move forward. But you remember how Trump said how much he loved WikiLeaks in the day, and then he said something like, oh, I don't even know who they are. It was just a bizarre moment. And for a lot of Trump supporters, that wasn't a good moment. I will say this, that if Donald Trump, the week before the election, decided he was going to pardon Julian Assange, I think he'd win the election, and I think he'd win big, because there'd be some traditional Glenn Greenwald type, I don't call them liberals, but progressives, people on the left, traditional liberals, classical liberals, who would say, yeah, I mean, as much as I hate Trump, he's going to get my vote this time around, because defending press freedom right now is a very important topic. And the free flow of information in the era of COVID is extremely important to the future of this country and to how we deal with issues. So I give Tulsi Gabbard, again, more credit. By proxy, she's kind of on Trump's team here by proxy. Now, Trump hasn't made any commitments here, but I'll tell you what, his supporters are definitely more on board with this. And that's tragic. If you're still a Democrat and you're okay with what's happening to Assange, and you don't care about true press freedom and the ability of whistleblowers to come forward, if this doesn't like register somewhere pretty high on your priority list, then I don't know. This party, the Democratic Party, is a dead party. The Republicans aren't far behind, but I think the Republicans are open-minded enough in some ways to consider free speech issues. And the Democrats are not. The Democrats are the party that they seem to want to shut speech down. And these neoliberal CEOs, these big tech companies and so forth, they're first and foremost to start, censoring and banning. And we need more information. We don't need less information right now. We need more. And I think Joe Rogan does have a certain ability to kind of cut through the crap and get to the point. And he just says it like he calls it like he sees it. And I think that's what makes him very effective. So it's a big compliment from Glenn Greenwald, who has written some really great books on things like the surveillance state and, foreign policy, things that people don't, I don't know, it's not on their radar, but it's creeping in from all over. And the fact that Tulsi Gabbard aligns with Greenwald and Rogan, that's another kind of like poke in the eye against Biden and his campaign by proxy, indirectly. Again, Tulsi Gabbard has done zero for Joe Biden's election chances. And in turn, the Democrats have done zero for Tulsi. She ran a spirited campaign. She did not get a speaking part at the convention, which was all basically virtual. They could have had her record something. They apparently didn't want any of Tulsi's voters to vote for Joe Biden. I think they just assumed they're all going to go to Trump, or they're going to stay home, or they're going to write in Tulsi Gabbard. The Democratic Party really blew it when they decided to blackball Tulsi Gabbard. I don't care what happened in 2016. You had a candidate who could have changed the electorate. You could have had states voting for Tulsi Gabbard who've never voted Democrat or rarely vote Democrat. But guess what you did? You went in with the absolute worst candidate you could possibly put out there. Somebody who can barely get through a couple of sentences. So that's my video on this. That's my ramble for today. Of course, we've had two. Don't forget, I'll be talking with my good friend Charles Anderson a little bit later on, and I'll be posting that video to the channel as well. Please subscribe to the channel. The identity of the channel is going to continue to, I think, evolve, but for now, I think this is a good handle for what I do and the fact that I'm truly independent and I don't want to just be in a category. I just don't feel comfortable in a category. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you soon.